Some WWE moments are shocking, some are unforgettable, and then there are the rare few that feel like you've stumbled into a late-night horror movie that somehow made it onto national television.
The return of the dead man!
Buckle up, Teddy.
Moments where the lights dimmed a little too perfectly and the silence stretched a little too long, turning wrestling into something that felt more like late-night paranormal TV.
The Undertaker right here last Monday night.
And nothing set that tone more than the night fans watched a WWE icon seemingly die on live television. It was the 1994 Royal Rumble, and what unfolded that night remains burned into the minds of anyone who witnessed it. The Undertaker entered his casket match with Yokozuna as the unstoppable supernatural force fans had come to worship, the embodiment of fear during the early 90s WWF era. But what should have been a battle between two giants morphed into something closer to a televised execution. One by one, a parade of heels stormed the ring. Diesel, Bam Bam Bigelow, Jeff Jarrett, the Head Shrinkers, Tenryu, Kabuki, forming a mob attack that felt less like a wrestling run-in and more like an organised attempt to destroy a man. The casket became the focal point of a ritual-like assault, the urn became a symbol of stolen power, and the oozing green smoke that seeped from it transformed the entire arena into a seance. When The Undertaker finally succumbed and the lid slammed shut, fans weren't watching a defeat, they were watching what looked like a death. The silence in the arena said it all. Then the screen flickered to life, revealing Taker inside the casket, speaking directly to the audience, declaring he would not rest in peace before a ghostly silhouette rose from the video board toward the rafters. For many kids watching live, this was the night they learned the WWE wasn't afraid to go full supernatural and wasn't afraid to truly scare them. If that moment planted the seeds of WWE's darker storytelling, the Midian ritual sacrifice was the harvest. By early 1999, the WWE's Attitude Era was already pushing boundaries, but the Ministry of Darkness took things into territory that even horror shows wouldn't dare. Dennis Knight was kidnapped, dragged into a dim ritual setting, and placed before an Undertaker who had transformed from a wrestling legend into an occult figurehead.
Somebody!
Fans expecting a simple beatdown instead witnessed something closer to a dark ceremony. A chalice, a dagger, the Undertaker slicing into his arm and letting blood drip like an offering, Knight trembling as he was forced to drink from the chalice. The segment was disturbing, not because of violence, but because of how committed everyone was to selling the idea of a ritual indoctrination. This was the WWE at its most bizarre, its most sinister, and its most unapologetically theatrical. The transformation of Knight into Midian didn't just push boundaries, it shattered them. Parents complained, networks raised eyebrows, and yet the moment stands today as one of the strangest and most unsettling segments ever aired on live wrestling television. Just a few years before this, the WWE delivered a different kind of horror, less occult, more claustrophobic. The Ultimate Warrior coffin segment remains one of the most panic-inducing moments ever shown during early 90s wrestling. Warrior appeared on Paul Bearer's funeral parlor set, expecting typical mind games, but what he got was something far more terrifying. The Undertaker and Bearer wheeled out a coffin decorated in Warrior's colours, an eerie gift that carried an immediate sense of doom. In seconds, the mood shifted from theatrical to horrifying as Taker ambushed Warrior and slammed him into the coffin, locking it tight.
How's he gonna breathe in there?
What followed wasn't acting, it was genuine panic. Officials scrambled to open the coffin, but it had been sealed too well. Drills came out. Paul Bearer wailed with delight. Warrior struggled as oxygen faded. This wasn't just a segment, it was fear in real time. When they finally pried the lid open, Warrior was motionless, lifeless, requiring CPR to remain within the storyline.
Wait a minute, he's coughing! He's coughing!
For kids watching live, this was nightmare fuel. For parents, this was a moment that had them rethinking whether wrestling was appropriate for children. For the WWE, it was another example of how far they were willing to go to sell the supernatural aura of the dead man. But if Warrior's coffin moment brought claustrophobic terror and the ritual sacrifice brought occult horror, nothing prepared fans for the night. The WWE delivered what many still consider the most dangerous stunt in wrestling history.
Listen, unbelievable. Look at this, folks.
Mankind being thrown off Hell in a Cell wasn't horror because of supernatural elements. It was horror because it felt real. King of the Ring. 1998 began like any other PPV, but when Mankind climbed the cell before the bell even rang, the energy shifted. The fans sensed something was about to happen, but nobody foresaw just how far things would go. When The Undertaker sent Mick Foley plummeting from the top of the structure, crashing through the announcer's table in a violent heap, the arena gasped in a way rarely heard before or after. People didn't cheer, they froze. This wasn't horror storytelling, this was horror reality. Foley returning to the top of the cell after that unbelievable fall only to be choke-slammed through the roof, doubled the terror, transforming the match into something that looked closer to a near-death accident than a planned performance. The sight of Foley lying motionless, his tooth protruding through his nose, became one of the most disturbing images in WWE history. It cemented the moment as a terrifying spectacle, not because the WWE tried to be scary, but because they accidentally created one of the most horrifying stunts ever witnessed in live sports entertainment. If Hell in a Cell brought real-world danger, then Kane burning the casket brought pure horror cinema to the wrestling world. The 1998 Royal Rumble ended not with a celebration, but with a symbolic act of vengeance as Kane trapped his brother inside a casket, doused it in flames, and set it ablaze. The visual was breathtaking and terrifying, a closed coffin igniting while the arena fell into stunned silence. Fans believed what they saw. The Undertaker had been burned alive, smoke billowed, flames roared. The show went off the air without a resolution, forcing viewers to sit with the implication that something monstrous had happened. The WWE blurred the lines that night, delivering a piece of television that felt like the conclusion to a horror movie rather than a wrestling pay-per-view. But the WWE wasn't done with the dark theatrics. Later that same year came the sacrifice of Stone Cold Steve Austin, a moment that remains one of the most controversial and sinister visuals the WWE has ever produced. The Ministry of Darkness storyline had already made audiences uncomfortable, but the sight of Austin strapped to a massive symbol, arms stretched out, powerless, as The Undertaker raised him above the arena, was a step into territory no one expected the WWE to inhabit. It wasn't violent, it wasn't bloody, but it was a haunting image, a symbolic execution. Austin's helplessness, combined with Taker's cold demeanor, created a moment that stuck with fans long after the cameras stopped rolling. It became one of the defining images of the WWE's darker years, a visual so striking that even today it circulates across social media as one of the most shocking things the company ever aired. Moving from the symbolic to the psychological, the WWE shifted into supernatural mind games during the mid-2000s. The Randy Orton mind games era showcased the WWE blending psychological horror with supernatural trope, creating some genuinely eerie television. It began with the burning casket incident, where Orton attempted to end The Undertaker's legacy by setting a casket ablaze, but months later, Taker returned by rising from a flaming coffin like a resurrected demon, a moment that felt ripped from a horror reboot. The illusions escalated from there. Bloody visions of Cowboy Bob Orton appearing on mirrors, backstage hauntings, flickering lights in locker rooms, and even the infamous possession of Josh Matthews.
Messing with my head, and yeah, it's working a little bit. I'm this close to snapping, man.
Enjoying the ride, Randy.
Whether fans found it creepy or campy, the sequence of events brought a supernatural flair that made the feud feel completely different from anything else in the WWE at the time. Psychological horror took another twisted turn during the earlier years of Raw, when Diesel encountered his own dead body inside a coffin. This moment wasn't violent or intense, but it was unsettling on a deeper level. Diesel approached the coffin expecting a threat, but when he pulled back the lid and saw a perfect replica of himself, pale, lifeless, covered in a sheet, the atmosphere changed.
Whoa! That's Diesel!
The moment wasn't about gore or shock, it was about dread. The WWE had created something akin to a horror film reveal, a character coming face to face with his own corpse. Fans still talk about it today because of how bizarre and chilling it was, proving that horror doesn't always require fire, rituals, or chaos. Sometimes it just requires a haunting image that lingers. But the roots of the WWE horror can be traced even further back, to a moment that predates many of these infamous segments: the crashing of Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth's wedding. Weddings in the WWE have always been chaotic, but this one ended with a dark twist that left fans stunned. Savage and Elizabeth were celebrating what should have been the happiest moment of their on-screen lives, only for Jake Roberts and The Undertaker to turn it into a nightmare. The present box with Damien inside, the attack from behind, Elizabeth screaming, Savage trapped. The moment didn't need supernatural effects, the psychological impact was enough. It showed that the WWE's darker instincts were present even in the early 90s, laying the groundwork for everything that came afterward. And finally, the segment that became not one moment but a repeated spectacle across generations: the buried alive matches. While the concept eventually became a tradition, the first time fans saw someone literally buried beneath dirt on WWE programming, it was shocking. The sight of The Undertaker being covered shovel by shovel, the mound of earth growing, the haunting hand rising from the dirt after the first burial, it all landed like something from a vintage horror film. Over the years, the WWE revisited the concept multiple times, from Stone Cold burying The Undertaker with help from Kane to the Nexus ambushing him in 2010. Each variation added its own flavour of horror, but the core concept remained one of WWE's most haunting visual, the idea of a man being symbolically buried alive on television. These moments didn't just entertain, they disturbed, fascinated, and cemented themselves as chapters in the WWE's long history of pushing the boundaries of what live television could get away with. From ritual sacrifices to flaming coffins, suffocating caskets to ghostly ascensions, the WWE proved time and time again that its darkest moments were often its most unforgettable. And while fans may debate which era was the wildest or which storyline crossed the most lines, one thing remains clear: the WWE's journey into horror didn't just reshape wrestling, it created a legacy of moments that viewers still search, discuss, and revisit decades later. And perhaps the scariest part of all is realizing that some of these moments weren't scripted to be terrifying. They simply became terrifying because of how real they felt, how visceral they were, or how deeply they pushed into the unknown. Long after the lights dim, after the matches end, and after the crowd fades away, these moments linger like shadows on the mind. Because when the WWE went full horror on live TV, it didn't just entertain us, it haunted us.